Morning. Welcome to the Wright County Board of Commissioners, March 23rd meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. One little statement I want to read here. This last Friday, Wright County had lost one of our employees, Regina Hughes. She was our records management analyst in our IT department. In her role with the county, she interacted with a number of employees from all the different county departments, and it was very much appreciated, not just for her strong work ethic and professionalism, but for her kindness and good-natured way of interacting with other county employees. She will be sorely missed by those who knew her and also by the county board, and we would like to express our sincere condolences to Regina's family and friends during this difficult time. And if you just, we'd have a moment of silence for the family. World's a terrible place, unfortunately, at times. Alrighty, for the minutes of March 16th. Anybody have any questions or corrections?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion.
Mr. Chair?
You have a question?
Correction request. On page 5, second paragraph, there's a mention about potential grant dollars that are available, and it lists $5 million, and a corrected number would be $1.5 million. On my sheet, it's page 5, second paragraph.
Is it under parks or what?
The dental clinic.
For the
Dental clinic? Oh, it said 5 million?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. That should be corrected to 1.5.
Good catch, I didn't see
Must
that.
have missed the one when they were typing it up.
Yeah. Good catch.
Good catch.
I wish it was 5 million.
Mm.
But still, 1.5 is still was a nice bump from the state.
It's actually 1.4, I thought.
Oh, there's an extra 100,000 out there from somewhere.
And then even the one, yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, they'll get that modified up. Then you want to make a motion, Commissioner Ketchmark, with that amendment?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with that one correction.
All right, I'll second your motion to approve the minutes with the amendment.
All right, motion by Commissioner Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Vetch. Is there any other questions, discussions?
I guess just one clarification under Public Works Labor Management, that was under the advisory committee. It said that there's a new cabin in Nye Park, but it's new cabinets. So just, Angie.
New what?
Cabinets.
It's a
It's not
cabin?
Right, it's not a new cabin, it's
Oh.
cabinets, yeah.
They just forgot the idea.
We can't always understand very well with these masks on, I guess. So I meant to mention that. Sorry, Angie. Thank you.
All right. Everybody okay with those corrections?
Yep.
Hearing none other, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Review and approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they needed to add?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve today's agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Hewson, second by Commissioner Wetter. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Consent agenda. Is there anything that anybody would like to have removed for further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Ketchmark.
It'd be under administration, number 2, the request for approval of the salary of the Assistant Finance Director to $48.37 an hour. For
Okay.
discussion, please.
All right.
Related to just a couple things to clarify if the process was fair and if there are any consequences to or precedents if we do this in the future.
Okay, is there anything else anybody would like removed? I would like, under Health Human Services, item D4, removed for discussion. I don't think it's one that needs to go to the Personnel Committee. Anything else? So looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion. Approve the consent agenda with the 2 proposed changes.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Houston. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Commissioner Ketchmark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the request is to approve the salary for the Assistant Finance Director hyphen property tax operations at $48.37 an hour. I don't know if it's just mine on the background justification, but it's microscopic sized text on it. For the future, it was difficult to read, but I guess a couple questions and something else that got my attention in reading like the last line there, but just making sure that the process was fair. I guess that's one question. And if we do this, does it create any consequence or precedence that could cause a problem for us in the future? I guess I'll start out with that.
And I guess, first of all, you asking administration, or are you looking for the board's perspective?
Well, yes, good question. And when I read down below, it says the decision was made by the administration department in conjunction with the board chair. So it may be a 2-part answer here from 2 different entities.
Well, I'll speak to part of it here is that this is not a precedent. We have had to do this in other departments in the past where we freeze salaries. When there's been a change in somebody's job descriptions and the points change, instead of bringing people back down to that area, we just freeze them, and they're not allowed to have any raises until they catch up to it. The one that stands out was the custodians here, and and that was a number of people at that time. So this has been done before, and it's just not fair for the employees their wages to be cut. And it's only going to be a 2-year time frame before they start again increasing in their wages.
And Mr. Chair, this happened with the public health nurses too, back.
Yep. I mean, I think the precedence has already kind of been set that this is the general practice of what we've done historically. I mean, Administrator Kelly, from the examples that I've had out there, there are always a little bit of different nuances from each one, but.
Yeah, to speak to previous wage-related items, over the course of my time here at the county, whether it's part of a study that's been done or it's been part of negotiations, we've made various memorandums of agreement or the board has approved different actions to set pay. Thought it would be good to bring this in front of the board to have the approval to do so, as this was a reorganization that the board decided to do, and it resulted in this change in the position. Thought as kind of a fairness thing, this would be what we would recommend towards the board to move forward. From administration, had some discussion with the board chair about that, and hence bringing it forward today for further discussion. So I hope that clarifies from the administration standpoint.
And so if I understand it right, the person is a grade 19 working in an 18 position now, or that's the proposal?
Well, the job is going to be going to an 18
okay.
because of changes in the finance department.
Okay. And thank you for that. And as far as job description, you had mentioned what are the changes, if any, in duties and responsibilities, supervision?
The reason it dropped a grade is because there isn't as many direct reports as there was before because of the reorganization, and that's what dropped it from a 19 to an 18, largely because the number of direct reports there's a couple less than there was before, so it kind of just enough to make it go that next pay grade down.
Otherwise, I don't think there's any
The
changes.
work scope is relatively the same. It's mostly just the fact that there's 3 or 4 people that were reporting to that individual, or 4 or 5. I don't remember exactly how many off the top of my head, but that's the reason why.
Okay. And then, so on that last line, it says the employee would not receive any general wage or range movement increases in pay until the 2022 calendar year if the board is agreeable to this compromise. And I read the policy and it's noted here, and I'm wondering if what we're doing here today is going to automatically give the person a raise in 2022 if it doesn't meet that threshold with the new grade, because that's the way I read it, is that they would be frozen until the new grade meets what they're getting now, right? So is it anticipated that would happen 2022, or are we making an exception at that point, whether they're there or not, to give the person a raise? That's one thing I'm wondering about, because it talks about compromise and being agreeable to that. Does anybody know how that's going to shake out with that?
Well, we know what the percentage, what the range movements in COLAs are for the next couple of years, so I mean, that's where you factored that number, that we know that that based on the current contracts that we have in place, that threshold will be met at that time.
So that's when it'll level off even at
Yep,
2022?
and then at that point, you're back to grade 18, where you're placed where you should be within grade 18 at that point.
Okay, and that's, being a new guy, as I'm often referred to, I just wanted to clarify what we're agreeing to and what a potential compromise would be. And Sean Johnson, are you on? Did you have any concerns or anything to add on this? Apparently not.
I think-
Is that SJ?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Okay. Pleading the fifth. Okay, that pretty much answers my questions then, and thank you for that.
Are you comfortable with Commissioner Ketchmark?
Well, yes, that explained it, and I just needed, when we're talking about if we're agreeable to a compromise, I just wanted to know what that exactly meant, and if there's gonna be any consequence in the future going forward with the decision.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
good questions.
Yep.
They're all fair questions, so.
Can I have a
thank you.
motion then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the request for the salary to remain at $48.37 as presented in the request.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Ketchmark, second by Commissioner Hewson. Any further discussions?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. All right, item D4. This is being referred to the Personnel Committee, and it's because that we had put a freeze on job changes, pardon?
Positions. Yeah.
Positions, but this is not, this is actually dropping somebody, a new person down. It's not a new points or anything like that.
We're not
This is-
reclassifying a position, we're just changing it from being two existing positions, and we're just changing it from one to another.
So it's actually a cost savings to the county. And in an effort to save time and county resources, there's no reason to me to send this to Personnel Committee. Does anybody have any other concerns about it? It's, like I said, it's a cost savings to the county, so to me, it's kind of a no-brainer when we can save money.
Mr. Chair, yes, they've, certainly Human Services has done this in the past to increase efficiencies, or they've, looked to see that this position, is no longer needed, or it's better, another person is better suited for this other position, so I don't have any concerns.
I don't as well. And Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion then to approve the approval of changing a .5 public health nurse to a .5 social work position.
I'll second that.
All right.
I think we have a hand up too.
Yeah,
Who's,
Is that Jamie?
Oh, good
JS?
morning, Commissioners. This is Jamie Goodrum Schwartz, Health and Human Services Director. And just so you know, we did post it internally for the .5 public health nurse to see if there was any interest, and we did not have any bites. So, and along with just a strategic move to have this be a social worker, we appreciate not needing to go through personnel for this cost savings.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. So now you guys can find something else to do on Wednesday.
Okay, thanks.
Wednesday. All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Wright, second by Commissioner Houston. Is there any other discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. All right, on to timed agenda items. Mr. Tim Dahl, are you with us? Tim? Somebody upstairs go over and knock Tim, wake him up.
well, in the meantime, Mr. Chair,
Other-
Mr. Kelly,
sir.
have we already gotten the approval from MCIT already for our EDA?
We have not.
Okay, I'm going to say, that would have been unbelievably fast for my history with MCIT. I was going to be saying, wow.
Yeah, so I guess I can speak for this item on behalf of Tim at this point. So what this is a resolution where we're acknowledging the Economic Development Authority we've created as to be able to be covered under Wright County as an eligible member of MCIT. MCIT requires that we have a sponsor for any groups. So this resolution establishes that, so.
I mean, this is not controversial. This is just housekeeping. We have to have insurance
Right.
on our EDA as well as any other entities that we do. I was trying to understand when I was reading that resolution going, wow, I thought you were already saying we had the insurance coverage already. I was like, that's impressive. But with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to establish a resolution for sponsoring our Wright County Economic Development Authority for MCIT purposes.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Vetch, second by Commissioner Wetter. Is there any other discussions or questions?
Yes, I have a question,
Commissioner Wetter?
Mr. Chair. How long does it normally take MCIT to respond?
Well, I can say we've had some that have sat
For
out there for
history's sake.
we've had some that have sat out there for 6 to 12 months and
You're kidding.
that just kind of,
It kind of depends on, Mr. Chair, they tend to do it at their quarterly meetings, and depending on where you land in the cycle,
gotcha.
there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg of some of the things that need to be established in order before you can submit membership even to. So some of those will have to be addressed at the upcoming EDA meeting in April, as far as the budget and a few other things. So thought we'd get this resolution done in order to allow us to move forward with this piece, so.
So are they covered in the meantime, EDA, or do you have to go look elsewhere for the time being?
Right now, we're self-insured.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Correct, sir.
Okay, that's a good answer.
and I guess one other piece on that, because I know that it was kind of an ongoing joke because there was for a while there with some of the drones and stuff, they were kind of holding out trying to get more information at MCIT, so some of those things they weren't taking a lot of action on just because they were kind of still working on the issues and some of those ones. So certain things have had to wait longer than others in terms of getting insurance coverage.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
we had a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Resolution, Commissioner Ketchmark.
Aye.
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 Resolution carries unanimous. Thank you. Items for consideration, committee minutes. Commissioner Hewsome, you had volunteered.
Oh, I did, yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Okay.
know it,
Yes, we met as a committee of the whole on March 12th, and the purpose of the meeting was just to discuss the WIC program, which is Women, Infants, and Children. All 5 commissioners were there, as well as Administrator Kelly, Director Goodrum Schwartz, Kim Johnson, Sarah Groschitz, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including Jay Weatherford, the Director of Wright County Community Action, were present. And the discussion was whether to, every 5 years, the federal government gives a grant for, to run this Women, Infant, and Children's program. And Director Jamie Goodman Schwartz was talking about the benefits that Wright County could be as coordinator for the WIC program. And this has been run by Wright County Community Action for a number of years. If they coordinated the program, they'd have to add 5 new positions, and there'd be the possibility of sharing a registered dietitian with Sherburne County, and then the 2 counties would pay for that. So anyway, Public Health Director Sarah Groschitz and Goodrum Schwartz went over kind of the strengths, weaknesses, obstacles, and threats analysis. And they had presented that to Wright County Community Action, which Community Action then went through each of them and presented their side of it. So after much discussion, we determined that we would leave Wright County Community Action as the program director or administrator of the WIC program. So, and that was, yeah, a lot of discussion, and I think that, that's something that might come up again in 5 years, but in the meantime, we felt that they were doing a good job, and it would just be less complicated. Yes, Wright County could do a great job, but we're going to leave it where it is. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendation unless anyone has any questions.
I will second that.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Patch. Is there any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Next item, aggregate tax, the gravel tax. I believe, Bob, you'll be discussing this one. I'm hoping that this will be more exciting than when we talk about county ditches.
Well, I think just a little bit. They both involve dirt, right?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Ketchmark.
Thank you. Could I just give a little foundation as to, from my perspective in District 5, as to
Sure.
where we're at with this? Thank
Go ahead.
you. So discussion happened with me last year from a couple different sides of this. One was folks in the aggregate business that reported they were paying their dues, but they suspected others may not be. And the other was the entity of the townships that are benefiting from this gravel tax. And I think it's also important to point out this is not something that was recently manufactured by the board as a new tax. I think we got records going back to about 2002. And it kind of comes down to that old saying, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And so we're looking at just tightening things up a little bit, but that's the perspective from District 5 and the constituents. That was their concern. It wasn't just something that I brought, out of the depths to just start addressing, but there was concerns, and I just want to speak to that part from District 5 anyway.
It's been a concern
Since we've been on the board.
ongoing, and it's not just the county regulations, it's actually by state statute.
Okay.
So this isn't something the county has come up with. And I'm sure Bob can quote the exact state statute with it too.
I can probably find it.
298.75.
See? I knew he could.
That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. Commissioner Ketchmark approached me, and then several other commissioners approached me. There's some concern on what do we do at the county level to audit this gravel tax. We do send out reports asking them to submit their gravel tax. We do some fluctuation analysis, but we've never gone in depth to actually examine the pit or the pit records. So what I'm proposing as a way to improve our process to send out a letter to each pit owner or hauler or extractor. In your packet should be a copy of this letter, which basically says that in addition to the remittance of the gravel tax on a quarterly basis, we're going to ask you to submit additional documentation and have that documentation available for us to inspect.
Bob, just before you go on, it was not included in, it was an email sent directly to us, so it was not included in the board packet itself.
Okay?
So I would like to see that get on on the county website for,
You want me to call it up here or just
People
post
to
it to the
review.
website? You
pardon?
want me to call it up here?
I've already seen it, because you emailed that out. That was
Yeah.
the one that you worked with Brian and Greg on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I just want to, for the future, have it
Okay.
out on the website.
But we're hoping to get that mailed out soon to everybody, and that's to everybody that we know of a record. So in my investigation, planning and zoning has mapped out where all of our known pits are. So we're gonna send that out to the people that we know of, and through inspections, we're gonna see if we're missing anybody. I did confer with Brian, and this resolution for aggregate tax is border to border. So if we have any pits in any of our municipal areas that weren't subject to planning and zoning, we're gonna contact them to see if they're remitting gravel aggregate tax as well. So in here is a copy of that letter. We're hoping to get those out pretty soon. I don't know if we'll hit everybody, but we'll hit everybody that we know of.
What are other counties doing?
Other counties, as I've reached out to them, they're saying, hey, Bob, if you find out what to do, please let us know. They're being inundated with the same requests that, auditor's office or finance offices that receive the gravel tax don't have scales. We don't go out there and weigh these things. So it's a question of what can we do to further audit these numbers. So I'm working with several other counties, probably going to present something here in the summer conference about what we can do, small steps that we can do to improve that.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Vetch?
Greg, I think you're on line there. Statutorily, I mean, if people are grossly negligent or not paying at all, what is the penalties that we're able to impose on this? Just, I'm curious,
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vetch, if someone's not paying on this, we can assess them late fees for not filing their report. That'd be a daily fine that they can be assessed. And we can also go back and start collecting on these things and start doing separate audits on them if they're not paying.
Can they be subject to lose their conditional use permit for it if they are not paying the tax?
By and large, I don't believe the payment of gravel tax as a conditional use. It is listed as a condition on permits. So I don't think we could violate them for that.
Could you make it that way? So that way there's some level that they want to pay the tax, otherwise you could lose your permit?
Yeah, that's something that staff could start recommending on renewals and new permits, is that they have to pay the gravel tax pursuant to statute. But historically, that has not been included in conditions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I guess Greg and Bob, so several years ago when I was having discussions with township people about this, one of the concerns that they had was townships that don't have gravel pits or active gravel pits, but gravel trucks are driving on their roads, beating them up. So they're like, can't we get, some funding from this? So that's another concern that a lot of the townships were expressing.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hughes, if that's occurring, I mean, these gravel providers, when they're driving on trucks, should be using county highways. They shouldn't be going down a township road like that from a pit to somewhere else. I mean, generally in the conditional use permits, we usually require them to use county roads, stick to county roads, and usually the use of a township road is highly dissected when these issues come up for review. So access and haul routes are a big issue. So if someone, let's say the pit's in Clearwater Township or Silver Creek Township, and they're driving through Albion Township roads, they're clearly deviating, and I don't know why they'd be taking that shortcut down an Albion Township road, just as an example.
Right.
They should be sticking to county highways.
It's a shortcut.
Yeah.
That's what,
Yeah,
because it's a shortcut.
Well,
People find shortcuts.
Yes,
Yep.
right.
So if that's happening, then a township could look at doing some weight restrictions. That'd probably be the best way to proceed for them if a shortcut is popping up.
Okay, yeah, so they just need to track those people.
All right, Greg, now, the state statute in regards to those that the dirt is actually, or the gravel is actually mined, what about a lot of these pits that are hauling in gravel from other counties or something?
I believe there is a provision in it, but that's going to be hard for us to enforce without getting additional staff out there to monitor it.
Well, we know that,
It already,
we know
yeah,
that
it
it's hauling
sorry.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know they're hauling it in. We know they're bringing it from different roads. We know that's occurring, but trying to get the quantity amounts from them has been very difficult. So I think Bob has done the right approach here of trying to go after this right now and trying to be proactive and going forward. But it is something we can look at in the future.
But Mr. Chair, I'm just going to add to that. At the time of export, that's when the tax becomes a tax. So when they exported to sell it to this other pit, that pit should have remitted the gravel tax. So
Okay.
we'll have to, I'll work with Greg and see if do we double tax it?
Well, okay, so depending on if it came from the county, but if it's coming from a different county, from Hennepin County, let's say, I'm assuming Hennepin County is charging a tax, but now it comes in here and then it's used for mixing to make concrete or blacktop or something to that effect. Is that get taxed at all?
But you would be the
As
end
the final
user.
product?
It would be, I assume we'd take the same thresholds as sales tax. The sale of gravel from one business to another business, they're buying gravel from pit A to make asphalt at pit B. That would be a business-to-business transaction, so therefore it wouldn't pay the tax. The final tax would be the asphalt sales to the municipality or the business that's buying the asphalt, because that is now the final transaction. That would be, because that's the way sales tax works. You buy your food wholesale and you don't pay tax on it, but when you prepare it and sell it out to customers, you pay your sales tax on it.
My understanding in investigating with some of the pits is after they mine it, they crush it, they do stuff to it, that's part of the cost of goods sold. So when you mine it, that's when we're going to do the tax. You have extra costs, and then when you sell it, then you're going to remit sales tax.
Okay, so it can be just as confusing as ditches.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we have to have I mean, this is probably maybe the first of maybe another 2 or 3 conversations, because I'd like to circle back maybe, whether it's in a board meeting or in a committee of the whole, after you send the letters out. And I do want to have some discussions about making the planning commission, as part of their conditional use permits going forward, that they have to be compliant with the gravel tax as part of the condition. That should just be a standard practice, in my opinion.
Greg, you can address that part of it?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vetch, yeah, I'll talk with Sean Riley and Scott Deckard in the Planning and Zoning Department, and we can start making that change administratively rather quickly.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Ketchum?
I don't know if you had more to your presentation, but one of the ideas or theories out there is that there's exceptions and exemptions to people paying this. And when I read the statute, all I found is if you are transporting gravel by way of water, and I don't remember the last time I saw that gravel barge going down the Cool River. So if you can address if you found any exceptions or exemptions to where this would not apply in Wright County.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, I did follow up on that. I talked to the Department of Revenue. I did run across where things could be exempt from sales tax. For example, if the county's buying things, we can provide them our ST3 form. You avoid the sales tax, but not the aggregate tax. So,
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Sean, do you have anything that you want to add to this at all? No, I'm good. All right. Greg, do you have any additional statements at all?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so my guess is that our next step is to ask Bob to get this letter sent out to our local gravel pits.
Yep, and I'd like to find out, Mr. Chair, what we've been collecting from and what we send the letters out, to see what it matches. I mean, I'd like to have some follow-up on, are we collecting from every single active pit at this point or not? I'd just be curious to find out where we're at with that.
Do they correlate?
Do they correlate? And I guess That would be the first step that I'd like to have a circle back on. And then just to circle back to find out just a little bit more background on how they're working on with the conditional use permit and being able to get the pits. I'm guessing, Greg, that that's not something that we can just retroactively do with the conditional use permits. It's going to be every time they renew, that we can put that as a new condition?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Vetch, that's correct. We can't retroactively add a condition on. It'd have to be on a new permit or as part of an amendment process, or, yeah, the only time you could go back is if they violate their permit and you actually make a finding that they violated their current conditions. Then you can add something on outside the scope.
Ordinance draft?
You can't do it as part of an ordinance draft. Well, I mean, we already have the statute saying they have to pay it, so, but you can't revoke their CUP for that.
But, so, because if I draft an ordinance that would make them to be compliant with paying gravel tax in order to have a conditional use permit for gravel, then
That's something you could do.
That way, then
That'd be-
then I don't have to go. Then makes everybody, even the ones that are already grandfathered in, subject of losing their conditional use permit.
Well, they'd be, if you do an ordinance amendment, the people that currently have a CUP would be considered legal nonconforming. So that condition would not apply to the people that currently have a permit. It would only be going forward. There is a law in the books. They have to follow that law. And if they don't, there are penalties built into it. But the one penalty for the people that are currently active without that condition that they would not have would be the revocation of their CUP.
Okay.
But we can deal with criminal issues, we can deal with financial penalties that are provided in the statute.
One other additional clarification. We collect the gravel tax from townships, but we do not from cities, because I know there's a couple of pits that are in the cities, actual city controlled.
Mr. Chair, we actually collect it from the extractor or the transporter. We don't really receive it from the townships.
No, but I know, but if it's in the city limits, I mean, I know in the townships we collect, but do we collect from this, when they're in the city limits also?
That is something we need to investigate. We have aerial photography to kind of see where some gravel pits are. We'll see if we're receiving any kind of reports from them.
Because I know there's one in St. Michael and there's one that's being developed in Hanover too, so
yeah.
that's what I'm just curious about.
And that's where his statement, because border to border, so statutorily, we can collect gravel tax on those. We just, in our practices, I don't know that we have been, so.
Okay. Do we need a motion to have Bob get this letter sent out? Please?
Yeah, I think that'd be the best course of action based on the discussion.
Okay. So I'll look for a motion
I will
to,
make that motion, Mr. Chair, for Bob to send that letter out for
I'll
the
second.
providers.
motion by Commissioner Newsom, second by Commissioner Wetter. Is there any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
All righty. Department budget review. So who do we have up for discussion?
That'd be Bob. Mr. Chair. And good morning again, Bob. And we talked briefly about this week's review and just continuing on in the process. So you're familiar with the report that we're looking at. And in particular, under overtime for county auditor treasurer in 2020, what was budgeted for overtime was $700. On this report, it shows $8,800, 43 and 66 cents, which is 1,163% over the budget. On another report that I got from auditor treasurer, it shows $37,425.39 spent on overtime, with two people getting over half of that. So I'm wondering what the difference is from the actual report and showing 8843.66 and this breakdown by personnel of 23 employees that shows $37,425.39 for overtime.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, you're looking at a payroll distribution report from our payroll software. So actually I had two departments. I had the elections and I had the auditor treasurer budget. The $8,000, that is just the auditor treasurers. So if you take that 37 minus 8, the rest of that went to the elections budget. And if you look at the budget for elections, again, we set these budgets the year before, and 2020 was an aberration for elections. COVID,
Yeah.
the contesting of the way we're doing things, and just the appetite for people to vote absentee was crazy. But we budgeted $27,000 and we spent $27,000. So that was pretty good guesstimate of overtime for elections. For the Auditor Treasurer's Office, we had 2 new softwares. Remember in the License Bureau, we replaced MinLars?
Yep.
So we had to test it, we had to learn it. You'll see that one of the employees had a significant amount of overtime. She was kind of like a train the trainer. So we were being trained on the MinLars replacement program. And again, we were open for operations. During this whole COVID thing, you'll see that we did our very best to keep our License Bureau open. So the rest of it is due to our ERP program. We had staff working on payroll aspects of it. You know, they have to keep doing their job, but they had to react to the Slinky, I called it the Slinky approach to testing the ERP. Hurry up when they're ready and wait until they're ready. So we had overtime aberrations or differences from years prior because of 2 software systems.
Okay. Now, under the overtime, especially with the 2 employees that had over half of it, was that voluntary or voluntold, as they say?
Well,
Before you answer that, Bob,
Yep.
how many employees are in the elections department?
Well, there was a lot of temporary ones in there.
Yeah, the temporary.
But that wouldn't be overtime.
right. So
I wouldn't think so, but it's still possible, but not likely.
So if you look, we have an election supervisor who did a fantastic job if you look at the awards. And then we have a great support person for that person. So those 2 had to keep the elections going on, answering all the calls that were coming in, and then plan for this additional voting absentee. And then we had to do all the mailings for the absentees and stuff like that. So they incurred an awful lot of overtime.
Well, and
That was-
Mr. Chair, we should admit the fact that they were also tasked when COVID at that time, every time there was issues with it, they had to backfill any of these temporary people that weren't coming in because of COVID. So more often than not, they were end up constantly picking up the slack because they weren't having enough volunteers because of COVID. That's where really the pinpoint became an issue for them.
We were definitely impacted by COVID. Also, we had to work weekends. We had to get all these envelopes ready. We had to go through the whole process of validating the fact that we're sending out an envelope. And then when those envelopes came back in, we had to go through the whole process of checking them in and processing from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So there's a lot of weekend work for election staff.
And Mr. Chair, someone brought up the question, if you can clarify, do temporary personnel get overtime? I see temporary personnel wages was $1,064, but it doesn't really break down if, I don't know if temp service folks get overtime
Well,
or
they're
not.
still subject to state law. So, I mean, if they worked over 40 hours a week, they'd still, even if you're a temp employee, you'd still get overtime. But generally, I'm guessing that they're the fact that if you're hiring temp employees, you're going to hire more temp employees before you use a temporary employee on overtime.
I mean, I don't have the election supervisor down here, but if we plan to do a mailing on the weekend and that temporary staff had been used all week, and then there was a change, I had to bring them in over the weekend, we called them back in.
So these 23 employees that we're seeing on this report, though, are Wright County employees, or is there some temporary folks on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, I'm not sure if we have the exact same one, but do you see a REC next to some of the names?
Yes.
Those would be our temporary people, so they'd be reclassified to the elections part of it.
Oh, okay. Another acronym that I didn't know, sorry.
No,
All right.
can't keep up with all the acronyms.
Thank you,
For
Bob.
sure.
That's all I had.
Mr. Chair, I will echo that I think the elections genie is out of the bottle. I think going forward, when we look at the elections budget, we're going to have to anticipate overtime, and we're going to have, which we are, we're going to have to anticipate temporary people too. Because I can't support you hiring more people to do this because they could be sitting around for a long time. But I do envision in the future those two line items being heavily used.
One of the things the board did a number of years ago is that every other year and every fourth year, the election budget went sky high, and then it would be nothing. So what we did is we decided to start averaging it out so that it wasn't a huge impact on property taxes. So we build it up, and then for the big hit, then the 4-year one and the 2-year one.
But Mr. Chair, if I can just tag on to that, the purpose of that is also to recognize how much technology we have into the elections process. So what we do is we keep that budget the same, and then we earmark that levy for the off-election year to help fund some of our future equipment.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, we had Finance Director Lindsay Meyer here.
Good morning.
Thank you, good morning. And we talked a little bit, and you were willing and receptive to go over a few things that came up on the disbursement report from 3/17 of 21. And if you have that report, I'll just start out. Page 3, toward the top, there's a figure of $1,400 for complete self-defense, and then it says Hutch. Is there any clarification, more of a description on that?
Board Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, yes, there is. I do understand that this is a self-defense course for an employee.
Okay. And what department is it?
This is corrections.
Does the Hutch, does that represent that it was in Hutchinson, or do you know?
Yes, that is the name of the organization that provided the seminar. It's included in their name, and yes, indeed, they do have a Hutchinson address.
Okay, thank you. Next on page 5, there is a legal opinion is the description for $9,964.50 to Peters, Revenue, Cappenman, and A.
This is an employment attorney, and the nature of the payment is covered under attorney-client privileges.
And what department was that, can you say?
That is under the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, thank you. On page 9, almost close to the bottom of the page, there's a Bidney/Karen for $1,178.95, and for description it says contracted 36.5 hours.
This is a contracted long-term registered nurse. In this particular invoice, she helped out with COVID clinics. And it has been determined that this is less expensive to have a contractor do this service for us than to have an employee.
Okay, thank you. On page 10, toward the top, a description of COSP training -SL, KE, and it's a vendor name of Cooper, Hoffman, and Powell, LLC, for $2,000.
This is related to the home visiting grant. It is a grant-required training, which we are reimbursed for early intervention home-based visiting grant.
And what department is that with?
Well, I would think that would be Health and Human
Human Services.
Services.
It is.
Okay,
That's are the ones that do that sort of stuff.
Mr. Chair, do you have an intent of what you're doing with this? Because if this is for your own personal education, I mean, we don't need to do it in this forum. It's not good utilization of county taxpayer dollars. We have a lot of high-paid people that are in the room here, and they could be doing a lot of other work. If you want to ask these questions in a forum or in a manner that is intended to persuade other commissioners to take action, then I would say this is the right forum. But if you're doing it to get your own personal education, you can have this conversation in Lindsay's office at any given time. I'm sure she'd be happy to answer these questions at that time. We've done this for a couple of weeks now, and every time you haven't made any motion to make any type of change or policy, amendment. So for that, I would ask that you would, going forward, get these questions answered on your personal, or not, on your time outside of the boardroom.
Mr.
Mr. Chair?
Ketchmark?
Well, I guess it's a good time to bring up here, Mr. Chair didn't have any comment. I guess according to the handbook, I was handed second day or so that I got here, there is a role for Mr. Chair. We're allowed as an elected commissioner to come forward and make inquiries and ask questions. That's why the constituents elected me. This is something, I think if we could make a quiz of the other 4 commissioners and ask any one of these questions, I'd like to know what their answer would be without the finance director weighing in on it. So I think there is good cause. I think it opens the discussion for the future to clarify, because this is a public document on a public agenda, and anybody in this room or watching that wants to look at that, what really good is it if you can't find out the answers? Are we going to ask all the constituents that want to find out what these are to run door to door and ask on their own time? So I guess, are we going to follow the handbook or not is one thing that says that we're not to be interrupted without our consent, and that the Mr. Chair is to be the chair, and that other commissioners shouldn't be trying to weigh in and overrule another commissioner. We're all elected officials. We're entitled to questions and discussion. That was in the handbook that I was given, that three folks, commissioners here, had a hand in. So if we're not going to follow that handbook, let me know. And if we are, then I ask that we do so moving forward. But Mr. Chair didn't say anything and was allowing another commissioner to import his own personal philosophy on how I should spend my time as a commissioner. Thank you. I do have another item to bring up. Lindsay Meyer had no problem coming up here today and asking the questions. I don't know why I'm having resistance from other commissioners on this.
No, I don't think that's the question, Commissioner Ketchmark. The problem is, I believe, is that there would be a number of questions that could come up every week on every statement. So the problem is, I'm trying to figure out what you're accomplishing by doing this. I mean, we're answering the questions from a while ago. We're not solving anything right now. As far as what we can accomplish, that all gets done during budget times, where we go down in the nitty-gritty and figure out what departments are spending money on and how we can change that, or how we can effectively do that. One of the problems we have currently is with our existing software, is that it's difficult to break stuff down. Now, once the new ERP system is, the residents are going to be able to see stuff a lot easier and actually be able to find out some of these answers themselves, for those that have an interest in actually checking into it. But go ahead and continue with your question.
Thank you. And again, we all agreed on my recommendation to be allowed to ask these questions at the meeting. So I don't expect to get shut down in the resistance here going forward.
Well, again, we're still trying to figure out what you're accomplishing.
Well, if I'm going to do some independent investigation on my own, it would help to have some place to start. And we've got one source here that generates this report weekly. And this isn't going very far in the past, Mr. Chair. This report is dated 3/17/21. Now, the overall department review, we started in 2020, which the rest of the board figured would be too cumbersome if we'd go through the maybe 10 different departments that I had questions on.
Now, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ketchmark, you understand that these warrants are already approved and they are being just presented to us. You don't even have the ability to not pay them at this point because they've already been paid. Okay, so they are literally just being presented to us for informational purposes.
Well,
But I think, if you want information to get transparency to the public, which I think is great, and if you want to take on the aspect of where you want to sit down and we can set up a YouTube where Mike sits here with the finance director on a YouTube and just talks about each of the line items and having a question back and forth on what is overtime in this department. I'm just staying from in this room every week to go through dozens of line items And at the end of the day, I mean, it's just for your own information, because nothing changes. You didn't make any recommendations on changing an overtime policy. You didn't make any recommendations on internal policies that would change these expenditures going forward. I mean, I'm not trying to shut you down on it, but I just am trying to understand what you're trying to accomplish by doing this. Because if it's just to basically consume time is what it looks like, because I could come in here and say, you know what, I want to review all thousands of lines of the budget, and we're going to sit here till 4 o'clock today. And I mean,
Mr.
that
Chair?
would be a poor utilization of everybody's time.
Commissioner Ketchmark, just a moment. Commissioner Vetch. In a way, I have to kind of disagree. It is good to look at these. And when you do have a specific question, it should definitely be brought up. And I'll go back to the one that I had brought up many years ago when our jail was still under warranty, and we paid somebody $36,000 to redo the painting in one of the showers because it was peeling off in sheets. So
Never been used.
they should, yeah, it had never been used, is correct. So those things should be looked at and questioned. There's no doubt about it. And if you have specific real reasons, it should be addressed. I have no problem with that.
I agree, and because we've pulled things in the past where there should be some correction going forward on it, because that like your example, it was not right. We've had some questions about out-of-home placements, which we realized that we had to start robusting our efforts in trying to either get more foster care parents, because we were realizing that we were having to utilize places that are far less cost-effective because of our out-of-home placements were way over budget. I mean, that's just the discussion on this, so.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
And again, this, when it's brought up on the agenda, it's under the consent. I personally want to know what I'm giving consent to. Otherwise, it's implied consent. And what's the purpose for running across the table if we can't ask about it? I want to know what, just like the other decision on the salary, I'm not just going to automatically run it through, because otherwise at that point, why have the discussion? The constituents continue to tell me that this is a very good use of time for us to hear the answers and for the constituents to hear the answers. I can't speak for other people's districts and constituents, but for mine, that's what I'm hearing. If I can continue then, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay. On page 15, we have Pfeiffer Property Management for $1,770. It says Feb and March rent, Sean Pre. I'm wondering what we're paying rent for at Wright County, if it's a building or something else.
This is for an individual participant in drug court. We are reimbursed from a federal grant for this.
So Sean Pre is the person that was reimbursed? Thank
No,
you.
Pfeiffer Management.
Okay. All right. Another contract item on page 8 is Gabriel/Kathleen for $1,600, and there's hourly contract with dates on it.
This is part of the court administration expenses, and this is attorney fees representing individuals where we are required to appoint an attorney.
Who represents children.
That's all I have. Finance Director Meyer, I appreciate your attention and research in those items.
Thank you.
Clarified a lot, thank you. That's all I have for budget review.
Lindsay, before you do walk away, when the new ERP system is up and running, this will be much easier to decipher. We did check to see how many, I know right now we're limited on how many letters we can put on a line. I know we had talked about looking into what the new ERP system was going to allow.
I don't know that I can confidently give you an answer on how many characters, but I do know at this point, it is we can either spend the money to do it, which I imagine would be relatively costly at this point, or we can accept what we've been provided.
Okay. And just for the public, ERP is in trials right now within the
Yes.
county?
Yep, it is
learning
currently in UAT acceptance testing.
Okay.
User acceptance testing, mode status.
Okay,
So staff have been diligently working, testing, and giving feedback back to our ERP service provider to address any concerns that we have, make corrections, and then retesting.
and has that been going well?
Yeah.
With very limited issues? Well, some issues, I mean,
There are issues,
we-
and we
we-
expected there to be issues.
we know software
Yes.
can be very good, and some
Yep.
software such as MinLars can cause even more difficulties.
County staff on the whole are working very hard to make sure that this runs smoothly. They have had challenges, I will not deny that, but,
Well, I would expect it. It's something new.
yep,
But even still, the ERP is still not gonna be, I mean, it's not gonna be as intuitive as a person may think. I mean, you're still gonna have to have a strong knowledge of how the funds come in and what the coding is. I mean, you just can't ever make it like at year 5 and you can open it up and just understand how it is and where the money goes. I mean, I respect Commissioner Catchmark, you're asking the questions. I just want to make sure that we don't just every week just pick 12 just random ones and just, or 15 random ones or whatever it may be, that we're really, there's a motive behind the questioning of it, because if it's just for the information piece of it, I think you could do that outside of this forum, so.
Mr. Chair, can I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think as a commissioner, we should all be concerned with the interpretation of these names and figures, and I guess we could go down the line if need be and quiz everybody and see if they actually know what they're giving consent to on this. But if not, then I think it's a very good use of time, and the constituents agree. I'll leave it at that and look forward to our next discussion on budget.
So
Thank
who's
you.
who are you planning on for next week, or actually in 2 weeks?
I'll talk with Mr. Kelly on that. I didn't dig that deep into it, but if you'd like to know sooner than later, I can relay that to you.
Just out of curiosity.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, question on that ERP. When do you estimate that that's what the program will be using then? Since you're saying they're kind of playing with it right now, and then they'll go back to a contractor to,
Yes, our implementation contractor.
okay, so when do you think,
We are hoping for June.
oh, okay.
Yep. Just to build on that, Mr. Chair, and the question, we are hoping to do a release here in June for the financials, and then a second release in December of '21, which would be the remainder of the items, including payroll.
Oh, okay.
So-
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
And
moving
so I'm gonna
on.
note, Mr. Chair, I do a great deal of all of my work outside of this boardroom. I don't have to showcase my work in front of the public to make sure that they understand that I am actually questioning county operations and making sure that things are being efficient and well accounted for.
All right, moving on.
Mr. Chair, just a logistical item, so we've had this item on again, discussions had planned to put it on again next week. If you'd like to see something different on the agenda, please let me know, so,
Well, we don't have a meeting next week.
correct.
All right, moving on. Resolution setting county board per diems for the newly established committees. The two committees that it relates to is the Mississippi St. Cloud One Watershed, One Plan Policy Committee, and the South Fork Crow One Watershed, One Plan Policy Committee.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve per diem for those two new committees.
I will second that.
Motion by Commissioner Houston, second by Commissioner Betts. Is there any further discussions? Hearing none, roll call vote. Commissioner Catchmark?
Aye.
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 Aye, and thank you.
We feel that we value your time.
Since you've decided to pay me for those meetings, thank you.
All
Might
right,
have some driving involved in those ones as well, so.
Right now, it's probably,
It's Zoom right now.
all All right, item 4, schedule committee of the whole to discuss snow removal and lawn care. This is something Commissioner Ketchmark had brought up about once we move out to our new facility to explore having our own personnel doing it and what the cost will be compared to having private contractors do it. Instead of having this done multiple times, I'd like to see it done as a committee of the whole, so everybody can be aware of what the costs are and what the logistics are and how it's going to affect county roads and parks and a number of other things, which are those two departments that would be able to do the plowing and the mowing. There's a number of people that we need to have involved in this discussion, and some of them had been on vacation and other things that were going on.
Well, it's gonna take some time to compile all the information too.
Yep.
Oh, so we can't do it tomorrow?
And I thank Commissioner Ketchmark it's a good time to review it with leaving this property and going all on one campus. I mean, we did that analysis years and years ago, and it's good that, every period of time, especially with change, that you look at it. So I think, you're bringing that up to say, hey, let's question it and look at it. Does it still make sense versus before? So.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one that kind of pushed it because it drove me nuts watching a $35 an hour gentleman mowing a lawn.
Mr. Chair.
When we could contract, it's so cheap.
And I've heard the comment several times that it didn't make sense to this point because of where we're situated. I just, to say, and Commissioner Vetch will appreciate, because I actually did some independent investigation outside the boardroom, that what I found for figures and proposals from the constituents that have watched this go on for years, that I'm not convinced that this is the best deal currently. And the fact that we got pretty much another full winter to deal with as we are, because we don't know for sure. We're going to be moving in January 2021, possibly, don't know. 22. So
We're late.
understood. So I've just heard it several times, and I'll just let you know that from what I have seen so far and looked at, and I haven't seen it all, but I'm not convinced that that it is the best situation right now. So I just leave it at that. But thank you for allowing us to look into it, and we'll keep gathering info. And are we looking at a date here, or?
Yeah, everybody, how long do you want to give them, Mr. Chair, staff to be prepared for this?
Well, you're going to be gone, I'm going to be gone.
So you want to look like the 19th to the 23rd? Or you want to go to the 26th to the 30th of April?
I'm thinking towards the end, I would
That's
like
fine.
to see, the 26th, I'm not sure I'll be around yet.
So should we go to the 29th?
Gives us, everybody plenty of time.
What date?
29th of April?
Thursday?
Yep. Does anybody have any issues with that date?
Mine's open still.
Would CMRPB
That's the week before,
the 29th? Oh, okay.
22nd.
Okay. All right.
What time, Mr. Chair?
What time works for everybody?
10?
9 or 10?
10?
Okay.
You want 10? Okay, 10?
Is that, do you think will work for admin?
Yeah, timeline wise, that's more than sufficient time. I was just checking with calendars because I had inquired on shorter time frames. So it looks by people's calendars that the 29th appears to work for all those that I'd like to have there, but I will verify or have them send an alternate.
Okay. Alrighty.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to set committee of the whole to discuss the snow removal and lawn care on April 29th at 10 a.m.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Hewsome, second by Commissioner Ketchmark. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. All right, in the interest of time, since we have a committee of the whole and 14 minutes, regarding the American Rescue Plan. I ask that you keep your information regarding advisory committees and advisory board updates to a very minimum. Commissioner Ketchmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Short week of meetings. AMC, there was some good training last week on that for new commissioners. Mayor's meeting, some of us were at Red Lodge in Waverly last week. It was first meeting for me, good to meet the group. Planning Commission, 3-hour meeting. Most items were resolved. That's all I have.
I like your response. Most of them were resolved. Was everybody happy? That's the other question.
So, yeah, in addition to the Mayor's Association meeting, I was at the Annandale Safe Schools meeting, and they are looking at building a new high school. The big problem is their middle school. It would be, I mean, just a $16 million fix for the AC alone. And so they're looking at, then if they build the new high school, then the middle school can move into the high school. And the kids are happy to be back in full-time, and it's going well. And I had a nice meeting with Lori Bacot, the new drug-free community coordinator through MEDA. So she's got some great ideas, and we'll hear more about those going forward. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Yeah?
You're not gonna go?
No, nothing real exciting last week.
Last week, just a number of meetings with CMRP Executive Committee to prepare for a retreat/workshop this coming week, and then I had Wright County Economic Development Partnership, and Phil Kearns from the administrator from Delano did a great presentation on the city of Delano, as well as Adam Nasted, is that how I say it, for the Albertville city administrator, did a really great presentation on projects that they have been going on within Albertville. All I can say is that we have a lot of development going on in Wright County.
Residential and also
Residential and commercial.
There's some good commercial stuff going on.
There's a lot of industrial production,
Industrial,
businesses that are coming in, so.
Good thing.
Yep.
Commissioner Wetter.
Okay, on March 17th, by Zoom was the Wright County Historical Society meeting, and they're in the process of redoing their financial reports. They're still working around the Nelsonian and doing painting and stuff. They're continuing to digitalize papers, and they hope to see many people doing bidding next month. They're having an online auction, and it's going to, what they are also calling an estate auction, which is going to be old and new things. So make sure you watch that for that. And they're still closed, but they're going to reevaluate in April. And I also finally was able to attend, actually, the county government 101 with the AMC presentation with Mr. Ketchmark. And I have caught up on all the past ones. They were good enough to record them for me, so I'm up to date now. So that's it.
I don't know, do we want? Go ahead, Administrator Kelly.
I'll be brief. As Lindsay mentioned, user acceptance testing on the financial portion of the ERP project is ongoing, and we're moving into the section where we're doing the deep dive on what's been configured on HCM, or the Human Capital Management. So that's taking a lot of the human resources time on that. Did have the opportunity to attend the Monticello Safe Schools last week. Had a regional administrators group I participate in, and had a similar discussion building on what Commissioner Vetch said about development. Both Rockford and Phil from Delano were saying they have about 70 shovel-ready lots ready to go, and several hundred more platted, so growth continues to take off in the county. So thanks.
That's it?
I'm brief.
They have a nice redevelopment thing going on along the river there in the old, what is that, the granite?
I don't remember the name, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a
spoke through
site
it.
that's basically been just a dormant site for decades now, and now they're gonna get it all, just, redeveloped into, density, apartment housing.
Where's this at?
In Delano.
Cool. All right, nothing to come before the board. We are adjourned at 10:22.